Okay, we're going to read chapter 2 of Gooney Bird and the Room Mother. Chapter 2. The word indefatigable was still on the board in the upper right-hand corner, followed by its definition, never showing any sign of getting tired. Now, after the discussion about matching socks, Mrs. Pigeon carefully wrote ennui at the end of the word list because Gooney Bird had said that wearing matching socks gave her a feeling of ennui. The children knew exactly what to do when a new word appeared. They got out their dictionary and began to look carefully through the pages. "I found it," Tricia called out with her hand raised. Mrs. Pigeon pointed to Tricia and she read the definition aloud carefully. A feeling of weariness and dissatisfaction. "That's right," Gooney Bird said, nodding her head. "That's exactly how I feel when I wear matching socks. Weary and dissatisfied." "May I be right smack in the middle of the Muriel, Mrs. Pigeon?" she asked. "I want to work on Squanto. I want to color his feather." "It's a mural, Gooney Bird," Mrs. Pigeon said, "not a Muriel." "I know that," Gooney Bird replied. "I just like to call it the Muriel because of Muriel Holloway in the office." Muriel Holloway was the school secretary. She had spiked hair and fancy fingernails. If you threw up in school, first you went to the school nurse, and then Muriel Holloway called your mom to come get you. "May I be right smack in the middle and do Squanto?" Miss Pigeon nodded. Gooney Bird knelt in front of Squanto and began to examine her crayons. "Everyone choose a place on the mural," Miss Pigeon said. "We want to get it finished before the pageant. Nicholas, could you work on the forest in the background? Chelsea, how about you? Could you do the turkey?" Gooney Bird had begun to color Squanto's feather blue, but all the other children remained standing. They were all looking at their own feet. They looked weary and dissatisfied. "My feet match," Felicia Ann whispered. "I have a feeling of ennui." "Mine too," Tyrone said loudly. "My feet are the boringest ones in the whole room. I feel a whole lot of ennui. Can I switch one sock with Nicholas?" He sat on the floor and pulled off one white sock. "Trade with me," Barry Tuckerman called. He was grabbing at Ben's left foot. Ooh, let's get the focus back here. There we go. "Me," Malcolm called loudly. "Someone switch with me." "My goodness, class," Miss Pigeon said. "Can we keep our voices down, please? Look how carefully Gooney Bird is coloring Squanto. We must all get busy on this mural." But the class wasn't listening. The children were examining their own feet and their classroom's feet. They were comparing socks and grabbing and yelling. "You've lost him, Miss Pigeon," Gooney Bird said with a sigh. "And it was my fault. I apologize. I'll try to make it up to you." She stood up. "Class," she said. Gooney Bird had a very loud voice and when she wanted to use it. "Class," she said again. The children looked up. They became quiet. "Here is what we're going to do," Gooney Bird announced. "Arrange yourselves in a circle, please. Try not to step on the Muriel." She reached out and took the hands of the children nearest her, Tyrone on one side and Ben on the other. Tyrone reached for Chelsea. Ben took Beanie's hand. One by one, the children arranged themselves in a circle around the mural. Mrs. Pigeon entered the circle by taking the hands of Nicholas and Chelsea and standing between them. "Now," Gooney Bird announced, "at the count of 3, we will each remove our left sock. 1, 2. "Oh dear," Mrs. Pigeon said. "I'm wearing pantyhose. I think I'd better drop out." Gooney Bird nodded. "You be the supervisor," she suggested. "Ready?" Gooney Bird said loudly. 3. Left socks off. Every child, including Gooney Bird, removed a left sock. You'd better help Malcolm, Mrs. Pigeon, Gooney Bird said. Remember, he has that problem with left and right? Mrs. Pigeon nodded. She went to Malcolm and pointed out his left foot. Ready? Gooney Bird said. Everyone got that left sock off? The children nodded. They wiggled their toes on their bare left feet and waited for their instructions. At the count of 3, pass your left sock to the person on your left. That will be the person beside your bare foot. Malcolm, Mrs. Pigeon will help you. 1, 2, ready, 3. Each child handed a sock to another child. I got a girl sock, Tyrone said. I don't want no girl sock. A sock is a sock, Gooney Bird said. Anyway, she added, you happen to have Chelsea's sock, and Chelsea is one of the smartest girls in this class. Some of her smarts may still be in that sock and may rub off on you, Tyrone. You've got a very lucky sock there. Now, can you all guess what comes next? On the count of 3, you put on your new sock. 1, 2, 3. In a moment, all the children were wearing unmatched socks. Even Gooney Bird's original pair of 1 red, 1 yellow had become a pair of 1 red, 1 white with a blue stripe. They all looked down and admired their feet. There is not a single pair of boring feet in this classroom now, Gooney Bird announced. Except mine, Mrs. Pigeon said with a little laugh. Except Mrs. Pigeon's, Gooney Bird agreed. Now, class, on the count of 3, do we switch socks again? Beanie asked. Nope, we get to work on this Muriel because it needs to be done by the pageant. 1, 2, 3. Very shortly after the count of 3, when all the children had picked up their crayons and gone to work, the intercom squealed with a deep voice spoke. This is your principal, John Leroy. Good morning. Good morning, the children said to the intercom. We should have done this last month, Mr. Leroy explained, or even in September. But I got busy with the selection of crossing guards and I had to deal with certain issues and problems of playground behavior, as you know. Here's the kids working. He paused. Malcolm looked up guiltily. Malcolm had been a playground behavior problem. But now it is definitely time to select room mothers. We will need a room mother for each classroom. Teachers, please ask your students to inquire at home if just a minute. Through the intercom, they could hear Muriel Holloway whispering to Mr. Leroy. Then he returned to the microphone. I have been reminded that last year we did have a room father in grade 3. Bailey Stevenson's father did an admirable job. His cupcakes were unusually fine, and we're sorry that he has found a job and is not available this year. Well, we're not sorry that he found a job. That's not what I meant at all. Mr. Leroy coughed and cleared his throat. I meant that we will miss Mr. Stevenson's cupcakes. Now, back to work, students. And teachers, by Friday, I would like you to turn in the names of the room mothers to Muriel Holloway in the office. Have a good day. The intercom squealed, buzzed, and turned silent. Carefully, Gooney Bird began to color Squanto's second feather red, just beside the blue one. Felicia Ann looked over at the 1 red and 1 blue feathers and smiled. I like my socks, she pointed out in a whisper. Oh, should we do chapter 3 too? So we have ennui and cajole. Chapter 3. My mother says absolutely not. No way, no how, Tyrone announced. Not unless it pays minimum wage. Mrs. Pigeon laughed. Afraid not, she said. Room mother is a volunteer job, no pay. She looked around the room. Did everyone ask? What did your mother say? Chelsea was scowling. My mother said if I come home wearing Nicholas's stinky, dirty sock again, she's going to call Mr. Leroy and complain. And no, she won't be room mother. She already did the bake sale and she's treasurer of the PTA. Enough is enough. My sock was not stinky and dirty, Nicholas bellowed. No, it wasn't, Mrs. Pigeon said. Those were just grass stains on your sock, Nicholas. Anyone else? She looked around. Keiko, maybe your mom? Keiko shook her head. My mother says she's very sorry, but she has to work in our store. My father needs her there. Yes, of course she does, Mrs. Pigeon said. I've been in your family store, Keiko. Your mother works very hard. You all have hardworking moms. I know, she said with a smile. Do you have a hardworking mom, Mrs. Pigeon? Bernie asked. Mrs. Pigeon's smile turned to a sad look. Not anymore. My mother is very, very old. She lives in a nursing home. I visit her every Sunday afternoon at the Misty Valley Elderly Care Facility. I always take her a bouquet of flowers. She seems to like that. She looked around. Malcolm, did you ask your mom? Malcolm's made a face. My mom has a trip. Oh my goodness, of course she does. How could I forget that? Someone who has brand new triplet babies at home can't possibly do anything else. And maybe we shouldn't even have asked. When I asked her, she screamed, Malcolm said. How are those babies, Malcolm? How are they doing? Bad, Malcolm said. They have diarrhea. Oh my goodness, no wonder she screamed. Anyone else? Asked Mrs. Pigeon. Beanie? Beanie shook her head. My mom takes me swimming lessons on Monday afternoon and ballet on Tuesday and horseback riding on Wednesday and confirmation class on Thursday and violin on Friday. And she says if I ask her to do one more thing, I completely understand. Anyone else? Felicia Ann? Felicia Ann looked at the floor and shook her head. Barry? Barry said no. Nicholas? Nicholas was scowling. My socks are not stinky dirty, he said loudly. Chelsea's socks are stinky dirty. Chelsea's underpants are stinky dirty. Chelsea hit Nicholas over the head with her spelling book. Enough, enough, Mrs. Pigeon said with a sigh. She went to Nicholas and rubbed his head. She glared at Chelsea. Let's turn to our arithmetic. We'll talk about room mothers tomorrow. All of you ask again at home, unless she looked hopefully around the classroom one more time. Gooney Bird? She asked. Gooney Bird stood up. Today she was wearing a long velvet skirt and a sweatshirt with a picture of Earth on it. Mrs. Pigeon peered at the sweatshirt and smiled. By the way, I like your shirt, Gooney Bird, she said. Look, children, at what it says under the globe. Mother Earth, they all read aloud. We were just talking about mothers, Mrs. Pigeon pointed out. Here she is with her special Mother Earth sweatshirt. Read my back, Gooney Bird said, and she turned around. They all read the back of her sweatshirt. Love your mother. Well, fine, Mrs. Pigeon said. I wish the Earth would volunteer to be room mother. Unfortunately, the Earth doesn't make cupcakes. It would make stinky, dirty cupcakes, Nicholas said grouchily. Mrs. Pigeon glared at Nicholas. Did you ask your mother, Gooney Bird? Not Mother Earth, your real mother? She asked. Yes, I tried to cajole her. Mrs. Pigeon started to laugh. She always laughed when Gooney Bird used a new and interesting word. She turned and wrote cajole on the board. Dictionaries class, she said. Beanie was the first to find cajole in the dictionary. It's hard reading, she said. Of course it is, Mrs. Pigeon agreed. It's a grown-up dictionary. It stretches your reading skills. Stretch, 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 murmured Malcolm as he picked up an elastic band. Mrs. Pigeon gave him a look. He put the elastic band down. Give it a try, Beanie, Mrs. Pigeon said. You can do it. Beanie stood and read the definition of cajole slowly to the class. To persuade someone to do something by flattery or gentle argument, especially after a reasonable objection. So your mother had a reasonable objection, Gooney Bird? Mrs. Pigeon asked. Yes, she's a terrible cook, and her cupcakes are always lopsided. And also, she has to go to China on Thursday. And so you tried to persuade her with flattery? Yes, I told her that she was a wonderful cook, and I had heard a rumor that she might be invited to be a chef at the White House, and probably it would be good practice for her being a room mother. And that didn't work? Mrs. Pigeon was laughing. No, she said that if I were Pinocchio, my nose would be about 3 feet long. Gooney Bird scowled. She meant I was lying, of course, but you all know that I never lie. All the children nodded. They knew that everything Gooney Bird said was absolutely true. I really had heard that rumor. I said it to myself and heard myself saying it, so it is absolutely true. But she said no, thank you. She didn't want to be room mother, especially if she was going to work at the White House, because she wouldn't have time. Mrs. Pigeon pointed to the word on the board, cajole. In small handwriting, she wrote its definition next to it. Children, she said, tonight, please try to cajole your mothers. We really, really need a room mother, she said with a sigh. There was a brief knock on the classroom door, and then, without waiting for a reply to the knock, Mr. Leroy appeared. The children gasped, "The principal!" Usually he was only a voice on the intercom, but here he was in person, wearing a dark blue suit and his UNICEF necktie, standing right in front of the second grade. Just checking in, he said cheerfully. I was wondering if... Mrs. Pigeon shook her head. Afraid not, she said. Not yet. Mr. Leroy looked concerned. Well, he said, keep me posted. He turned to leave, then stopped and said, I like your shirt, Gooney Bird Greene. Thank you. Read my back. Gooney Bird turned around. He read it and smiled. A very fine admonition, he said. Love your mother. Yes, indeed. Then he left the room. Class, said Mrs. Pigeon, who was already writing admonition onto the board, get out your dictionaries. Boy, they're really using those dictionaries they got, huh? All right, we'll stop right here and read some more tomorrow.